So there's some early data from Israel that indicates that the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine appears to be significantly less effective against this Delta variant. The Israel reported 64% efficacy compared to around 95% efficacy initially that was reported for the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. However, the Israeli Health Ministry said that the vaccine is still 94%, I think, effective in that area at preventing hospitalizations. What do you make of this report, Brian? And assuming that the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine does turn out to be only around 64% effective against this Delta variant, what would that mean for Pfizer and BioNTech going forward?
Yeah, so this is real world data, and that's great because, well, it reflects what happens in the real world, but it makes it hard to control. There's no placebo group, obviously, so you have to sort of compare it to people who haven't gotten the vaccine, and then try to figure out whether those two groups are actually, equivalent, and so there's a little bit of hand waving. So you have to get the statisticians involved. You also have to get the epidemiologists involved, and I think it's really hard to draw firm conclusions here. But let's assume that the conclusions are accurate. 64% is still effective. You'll remember before we got any data, the FDA said it would authorize vaccines if they were greater than 50% effective. So obviously 64 is higher than 50%. So that's I would say it's 64% is still effective against the Delta variant. Obviously, that means there's going to be some people who are going to get sick from the disease, and that's obviously going to drive some boosters. On the other hand, if it's 94% effective against hospitalizations, I think that'll probably drive some people to not get the boosters. The same sort of people who don't get the flu vaccine annually are probably going to see that my chances of getting sick are pretty low, and so I'm not going to bother to get the booster because even if I do get sick, it's not going to be that big of a deal.
Now, Brian, do you think this is a story that really matters at this point for investors? I've noticed some of the stocks, Moderna has been down some, and even though their vaccine wasn't evaluated in this Israeli study, BioNTech stock was down. Is this something that investors should really be paying attention to right now, or is it just too early?
I mean, it's too early, but it's definitely something you should be paying attention to if you're invested in vaccine stocks, because the need for boosters is going to drive the valuations in the next couple of years. If we don't need boosters, the valuations are way too high, and if we do need boosters, they're all right. And if we need a lot of boosters for years to come, then maybe they're even undervalued.
Yeah. My take on this is that over the long run, the emergence of variants like the Delta variant is actually good news for Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna, and others, but especially the messenger RNA vaccine makers, because it will increase the likelihood that booster doses are needed on an ongoing basis with the emergence of variants. So I suspect, while this might seem bad news right now for Pfizer and BioNTech with its lower efficacy, all these companies are working on booster doses on variant-specific vaccines. This actually could be good news over the long run, I suspect.
Yeah, I mean, that's the irony there, right? So
Yeah.
the longer the vaccines work and the less they need variants, the better they work. The lower the valuations of the company should be, because that means they're not going to have repeat sales.
Yeah, I have an article out. Here's the thing: the worst case scenario for Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna was that their vaccines don't work. Well, they're past the worst case scenario. But the second worst case scenario is that their vaccines work too well. And if they work too well, then they're not going to get those recurring sales that they want.